Welcome back to the Deeply Rested podcast. Today's interview is a deeply personal conversation with my good friend, Tarzan Kay. Tarzan specializes in writing emails that are fun to read and more addictive than whatever you just marathon watched on Hulu. Her programs and DIY courses teach business owners how to write highly addictive, story-driven emails that sell without using coercive sales tactics. Tarzan spent the last 3 years quietly dismantling her 7-figure boss babe empire and building a more inclusive online business that prioritizes people over profits. And that is exactly what she and I get into in today's conversation. Tarzan opens the door to walk us through when she started her business in 2016, through the height of her revenue-generating empire in 2020, through her personal transformation, her personal awakening that happened around 2020 to 2022, and where she is today, having made this very intentional decision to scale way back, to move away from the fantasy of having a 7-figure business that makes all of your dreams come true, and instead create a smaller business that maybe generates less revenue, but actually generates way more happiness, time off, peace, rest, everything that the Deeply Rested message is all about. I can't wait for you to listen to this conversation, and I hope that you find as much personal inspiration from Tarzan's story as I do. Enjoy this conversation with Tarzan Kay. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Maegan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. Hey, Tarzan.
Hey, Megan.
I'm so excited that you're here.
Well, I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh, man. We were just saying before we started recording that you will be a frequent guest on the Deeply Rested podcast because you and I have many things to discuss.
I'm a little offended that it took you this long.
to have you on the podcast that hasn't launched yet. Yeah. I apologize. I'm really excited for this conversation. This is something that you and I have in common, and I'm really excited to open the Deeply Rested podcast with some storytelling and some self-disclosure about why someone would walk themselves backwards in business from a 7-figure empire that everyone aspires to have on the internet to something smaller, more intimate, more inclusive. You've had a pretty wild journey in your business the past couple of years. And today I'm hoping we can start at the beginning and learn what you have learned from start to finish, or from start to where you are right now. How does that sound for you?
Take several days, but let's see where we get.
We'll give people the TLDR version.
Great.
Of the story. Okay. So yeah, you're internet famous, right? In our corner of the world, at least in the online business space, people know Tarzan Kay. You're a very successful copywriter. You have an incredible business teaching other small business owners how to write copy for themselves. We'll talk more about that later. But I actually, you and I have known each other for a while now. I was in your mastermind Power last year. 10 out of 10 recommend, by the way, for any listeners looking for a good mastermind. And now we're friends, and I've loved this journey together. But I actually don't know a lot about your origin story as a business owner. So can you just rewind your story all the way back to the beginning? What did you do before you were a copywriter, and how did you find your way to copywriting?
I did very little before my copywriting days. I started my business when I was 31-ish. And prior to that, I had never really had a very serious job. I taught music lessons for many years. I just sort of lived, the most I ever made in a year was $15,000.
Oh.
And I had to get really creative with my taxes because that was more money than I'd ever made, and I hadn't put any aside for taxes. I really had no clue how to make money, and I was okay until then. Like, you know, I was just a young thing, like traveling around the world, lived in Montreal where it's really cheap. Anyway, at 31, I had a child and was like, okay, now I have to actually support someone other than myself. And it's no longer acceptable to eat rice cakes for dinner. So I have to do something. So I had been traveling and I had picked up some freelance copywriting work, which was actually in retrospect content writing, but I didn't know the difference. I was like writing social media updates and blog posts, and I kind of thought maybe that was what a copywriter did. But I came back to Canada and some of those clients kept me on. And so I thought, okay, will be the career for me. And I did always want to be a writer. Like, you know, I have like assignments from my earliest days, you know, like homework assignments from when I was in grade 2 in my box of mementos, and it says, I want to be a writer. So I thought copywriting could be an avenue, and it turned out to be a great avenue. So when I started my business, I started taking programs right away and immediately niched down into the online program space. Well, niched down to email, first of all, because I discovered early on that email was something I was really good at. And then I was also taking a lot of online programs to figure out how to run a business. And so I found a lot of clients in those programs. So I specialized in email. I also wrote sales pages because people who need email usually also need sales pages. And the business grew like really quickly, you know, partly because it was easier back then. And also I was good at it. You know, the programs I was like, you know, the first program I took was B School with Marie Forleo. And back then it was a smaller program. I don't know how big it is now, but the years after I was there, it like doubled and tripled in size.
What year was it? Do you remember the year that
2016.
You took B School? Okay.
2016. Yeah, and there were 2,000-ish members in the Facebook group. So, you know, I picked up clients there and then took more programs because I also saw that as a way to get clients, a way to get in front of clients and also learn. It was about like, I think a year and a half maybe into my career that I was introduced to Amy Porterfield through...
Let's pause there. I want to reflect a couple of things first and then pick back up at Amy Porterfield. One of my personal philosophies about life is like, I just want to follow the breadcrumbs in my life. I did the traditional like academic training, climbing the professional ladder for a long time where the plan it's prescribed for you, right? The path is laid out. And I've given that up and really have embodied something that feels better to me, which is like, just follow the breadcrumbs, you know, let one door open another door and see where life takes you. And as I'm listening to you tell the story, I'm really in awe of how you've been following the breadcrumbs since you were in the 2nd grade and you wrote, I want to be a writer in one of your notebooks. There's just a way that your whole 20s, you were just kind of trusting the flow of things. And maybe you were having rice cakes for dinner, which, by the way, you're the one who turned me on to rice cakes with butter as a treat. So you're still eating the rice cakes, just maybe with some protein and fresh vegetables. But okay, I want to just sit with that for a second, that your 20s, you really allowed your life to unfold in a really organic way. Was that a scary time for you, or have you always really trusted that things were going to work out?
Oh, well, that's a good question. And we've been like, you and I have been in this inquiry for some time, because something that we have like talked about a lot in our private conversations is also being able to sit with the discomfort of not knowing what is coming next. Even today in my business, I don't know what's coming next. And I'm continuing to follow the breadcrumbs and like try things. Does this work? I don't know. But actually, like when I was in my 20s and I was teaching music lessons, I had a pretty strong sense that I would figure it out eventually. And that I would be wealthy one day. Weirdly, I don't know how I knew that, because I really had no idea how I was going to become wealthy. And I also, lived in a lot of scarcity and like not knowing how I was ever going to pay my credit card bills. So, I think just because you have belief doesn't mean you don't suffer from lack of belief at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like it's the whole like manifestation bullshit that they sell you on Instagram, right? Just like manifest abundance while you're sitting on the beach sipping a, pina colada. Like, no, that's not how it works. It's equal parts trust and feeling into what's true and then effort. And then like taking the action to make things come to pass. So I appreciate you saying that like both sides of the coin were present for you at a really early age in your life, in your 20s. You have this trust in life. You have this sense that like things are going to be okay for me. Like abundance is coming my way. I'm going to be fine. And on the flip side of that, you were living kind of a bohemian lifestyle in your 20s, and there was scarcity, and there were rice cakes for dinner, and you weren't maybe you weren't sure, how you were going to pay the rent when it came due. It's like you danced with that for a while, and then content writing, copywriting revealed itself to you. It just sort of showed up. Hey, Tarzan, there was like a knock on the door. I want to write this, and you just said yes. You did it. At the time, did you have a curiosity about being a business owner? Like, was that as present for you as I want to be a writer?
No, I had to figure that out later. And even today, I feel like when I in my career, like the core thing that I'm doing and that's most important to me is writing. Like my career is a writer. And all the business, like the business owner side of me is like, I wish I didn't have to do it a lot of the time. But
yeah, I feel that.
I do it because it allows me to be a writer. So, it took me a while to figure out that I was a business owner and how to do things mindfully. But I did hire someone in my first year who really helped me figure all that out and who helped me like create a cash flow spreadsheet and like set goals and like think about when it's time to hire and all of those things. I had a really excellent support person who is Sandra Booker, who I still work with today.
All hail Sandra Booker.
All hail.
There's an episode with Sandra actually coming out later this year. So yeah, she's so brilliant. That's great. I really appreciate your honesty about that. Yeah, you didn't wake up saying like, I want to be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur. That actually wasn't a part of it for you. It revealed itself alongside these opportunities. Okay, you want to be a writer? Here's some opportunities. Oh, hey, you also need more than rice cakes for dinner. And oh, hey, now you're pregnant. So you have a family to provide for. And it became obvious that going into business for yourself was going to be a pathway to make life sustainable and more comfortable than it had been in your 20s. I love that you made this decision earlier in your business to hire someone who filled the gaps for you, right? Sandra was someone who filled the gaps. You were bringing the creativity, the passion, the purpose. You knew why you were doing what you were doing. You were figuring it out along the way, but you were clear about what it is I'm here to do. I'm here to write. And then Sandra comes in and says, okay, great. And here's how you're going to make this a business. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. And she taught me things like project planning. We figured out like naming conventions for my Google Docs. And like there was like something that was really aligned between Sandra and I, because one thing I know now about myself that is not true for all business owners is like, I'm very organized. I'm very deadline driven. Like all of the things that are really required to have a business. I remember Sandra telling me, oh, like I tell all my clients to do this stuff, but they don't do it. Whereas I've never questioned, I was like, of course, if I'm creating and launching a new product, like I first create the plan and my project management tool. And of course, I check in every week to see what stage of the project.
That is something unique about you, Tarzan. I agree with Sandra's reflection there. Like you're very good at following instructions.
Yes.
You're like really good at following instructions. You don't resist when Sandra says
I'm a rule
like,
follower.
It would be really helpful if you had a cash flow spreadsheet. And you're like, okay, I'll have a cash, but that's not me. This is where you and I really differ, where I'm like, I don't need it. Don't make me do it. I like resist structure at every juncture. And I think that's part of what's made you successful, like you're saying, in business, is that you have accepted these aspects and you've let them work for you, which we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay, so 2016, you sign up for B School with Marie Forleo. Yeah. You're learning, your indoctrination to the online business space.
Indoctrination,
begins.
that is exactly what it was, yes.
I think really highly of Marie Forleo in a lot of ways, but it is, right? It is like this welcome to the online business culture. Yeah. Some people might call it a cult. That's a conversation for another day. And you learn, like, this is the way that you do it. You start getting clients. It is an ecosystem that really feeds itself, right? Like when you create a job for yourself, serving as an online business owner, serving other online business owners, and then you start doing programs for online business owners and you find clients there and everything. It's like, the beast begins to feed itself. And the positive side of that was things started flowing for you in your business. Like income was coming in, you're creating this structure, you have a baby now, and like that's a part of the equation. And then you meet Amy Porterfield. So let's pick up there.
Yeah, okay. So there was actually a few breadcrumbs that led me to her, one of which there was an email copywriting competition that I signed up to and won. And one of the judges was her existing copywriter who was kind of ready to pass the torch. Mm-hmm. He wanted to work on his own stuff. And so I got noticed by this person. His name's Rye Schwartz. And Rye and I kind of hit it off. And he said he would give me an intro. And he did give me an intro. And my relationship with Amy turned out to be super fruitful. And I like to think it was really good for both of us. Like I wrote her newsletter for some time. I don't think I ever wrote any launches. It wasn't really even a long-term project, but there was a couple things that made it significant, which was that I pitched her to speak at her live event. First, I flew out to one of her live events when I barely knew her, but I said, can I come and meet and I'll meet your people? Which was good for me as her copywriter to get to know her audience. So I went to the event, and the next year I pitched her to speak at the event. Mm-hmm. And I always did a really bang up job at her events. I knew it was a big opportunity. So I, hired someone to help me put my speech together, did the whole thing at my own expense, including hiring someone to help me. And then even another year after that, I went out and I was on stage again. Actually, I think I was at 4 of her events. Okay. So I really got to know her community. They got to know me. She always introduced me on stage very generously. So people thought of me as the amazing Tarzan who works with Amy. Lots of them hired me to write their stuff, sort of thinking if, they had what Amy had, it would be one step to replicating Amy's business, which was partially true, but not really true, actually. So I got a lot of those clients. I even had a bonus in one of her courses at some point. It was just a relationship that really sort of helped me build my reputation. One thing that I once worked with this guy, Ron Reich, who's so smart. One of, to me, the most interesting online people. And he introduced me to this idea of riding the coattails. And he said, when you can ride someone's coattails, it's really great. It's one way we get ahead in business is by riding the coattails of people that are ahead of us. And also bringing up who's riding your coattails. So I was always conscious of that. I was I rode Amy's coattails. I gave a lot back to Amy. I gave as much as I got, I think. But I also brought people up with me, I do have an email list where I built a lot of trust, and I put people's names in front of my people. I've brought many people to Sandra. And I think that's really important. It's one way that we use our privilege, and it's one way that I use my privilege in online business. There's so many reasons I had to leg up everybody else, and I can pass it on by bringing people along with me.
I really appreciate that as a tangent, the reciprocity of building professional relationships, because I've been in a lot of like mastermind events with, people who are super successful who talk about this concept in a similar way, but they don't ever talk about the flip side of it like you are, right? It's like, it's all about, okay, the best way to get ahead fast is, I heard someone use the metaphor of jumping on someone's high-speed train.
Okay.
Right? Like if you have the opportunity, if like there's a high-speed train, so let's say like Amy Porterfield's the high-speed train, can you like jump on it? Jump on it, grab on, like ride the wave with them. But we never circle back to, and when you do take that quantum leap into the next level of success in your business, can you just invite people onto your train?
Yeah.
Like with intention and thoughtfulness. And I feel like that is what you're describing, is really acknowledging people are on your coattails and then being intentional about, how can I support you? Like, how can I give you a leg up in a way I've had a leg up? And all of a sudden, the whole concept of riding coattails or jumping on someone's train, it doesn't feel icky to me anymore. It feels human. It feels like building networks of relationships. Thanks for sharing that. That feels like a very important reminder for all of us to keep the web expanding and growing with intention.
Yeah, I also think, so you and I have discussed this as well, there is also a possibility that people will overcorrect and like do nothing but like try and bring everybody up without like, just as an example, we've talked about summits and how when you do a summit, like you need some of those like key players that are going to like, open the, like really expand the reach, as well as some smaller players who will reach more people because of everybody else. And if you can, you can fall too deeply into like that, I must include everyone. It's my job to make sure everyone is included. And then you actually just can't get anywhere. You're all kind of stuck at the same level.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It feels like when you allow yourself to look at relationships with this like reciprocal mindset, you can say, okay, I'm going to gain something from this person and then I'm going to give back to this person. But with this overcorrection frame, if I am only saying, how can I give back all the time? How can I, singular me, be the person to like right this wrong, the systemic wrong in the field or in the world? It's like, no one needs you to be a martyr. It's not helpful. No one actually benefits. So I really appreciate the way that you talk about this, and hearing how this has played out in your relationship with Amy. It makes it so specific. I can really grasp it in a practical way, what this might look like in the real world. Yeah. So let's go back to Amy. So were you ever a W-2 employee with Amy's team, or were you always a contractor?
I was always a contractor.
Okay,
and
interesting.
As we're reviewing this, like, I don't think I ever did anything other than write her newsletter. And it wasn't even, it was a short-lived contract because it was expensive. Yeah. It was a lot of money for her to have me, like a gun, writing a newsletter. And so we worked together for, let's say, like maybe 8 months. And then we did some really great work in that time. Like we, kind of established a format for the newsletter and started batching them, which wasn't something that she had previously done. So we did great work together, and I was really proud of those emails. I probably wrote a few sales emails along the way, but not much. Sure. And then she brought it in-house, which I thought was a really smart move. Like newsletters, I don't think newsletters should be outsourced. It's too expensive.
Yeah. Okay. So here you are. You have this partnership opportunity with Amy Porterfield. I really appreciate you highlighting that you did all of these extra things to get on her radar and to take advantage of this partnership and this opportunity. You pitched her. I want to speak at your event. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So sometimes maybe she said no. Sometimes she said yes.
Oh, I'm sure I pitched her on things that she said no to. I can't remember what they were. Yeah, but surely she didn't say yes to everything.
You were so good at being a squeaky wheel. I'll tell you. Like you're a model for me, and just like you will just knock on the door over and over again until you get what you want, which is something I think female identified business owners in particular need to be more confident and just putting yourself out there, asking for what you need.
That's true.
You're good at it. You're good at it.
Been chasing
Okay.
after my ex-boyfriend for 2 years. So I'm tenacious.
You're tenacious. That's the word. You're like, I will knock on this door until
will.
somebody forcibly removes me from the premises. Okay, so I love that you had this tenacity in the relationship with Amy, and you really saw this opportunity for what it was. And you were willing to invest in someone to help me write the speech. And I'm sure you invested in lots of other things to help you take advantage of this moment in time when you could reach a lot of people and ride someone's coattails to take that big leap in your own business. I want to hear now a little bit about what you were working on in your own business at this time. What were kind of projects were you focusing on, and what were you doing to grow your own company?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was very focused on affiliate marketing, and that was where my first significant amounts of revenue came from. I started promoting the courses that I had taken and discovered that I was good at it, and also that it was at least as profitable or more profitable than doing client work. And also it let me do more of the thing I wanted to do, which was write in my own voice. So I did write for clients, and I still do occasionally write for clients. I mean, not really, but in my courses and stuff, I'm helping people with the writing. So I do slip into other people's voices all the time. But, even writing about other people's products, I still got to be me. I got to send emails signing in my own name. So the affiliate marketing was very successful. And that was sort of my next couple years. Let's say my first three to 4 years were one-on-one and then courses. And then I started to feel okay, I have my own, I would like to learn how to get better at delivery. Because when you sell, it's wonderful to make affiliate revenue. You just sell the thing and then you don't have to do anything. It's awesome.
And
sometimes
quick question, is the season when you were focusing on affiliate revenue, is that when things really picked up? There was a season in your business when things really took off, and from a revenue perspective, you grew really quickly. When did that happen on this timeline?
Yeah, I would say that was 2018 or 2019. 2020 was the only year I ever made 7 figures.
Okay.
But 2018, 2019, I was getting pretty close.
And that was predominantly from those affiliate promotions?
No, that's not true, actually. 2020 was my biggest year, and it was about half my programs and other people's programs. But 2018, 2019, a lot of affiliate revenue. But I wanted to let that go because I was already starting to feel like there were things about the sales process that I wasn't that comfortable with. And exposing people to other people's marketing, it meant putting people actually in a bit of a vulnerable position. So I think it was in 2018 or 2019, I decided to take a year off affiliate marketing, any affiliate marketing. Because those launches, they're very, maybe it's not this way anymore. I haven't done it in a while, but B School and Digital Course Academy, some of the bigger programs, I would assume it's this way with other large programs that do a lot of affiliate stuff. There's a lot of competition for that sale, a lot. So you have to treat it like it's your own promotion, which I always did. I went all out. I did webinars. I offered bonuses. I sent tons of sales emails. But that was such an enormous amount of effort. It meant when I was launching my own stuff, I didn't really put that much effort into it. And I was okay, hang on. It's happened several times that when I had clients, I was okay, what if I put the same energy into my own work?
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm writing more emails. Okay. What if I put the same energy that I'm putting in other people's programs toward my own programs? And that was a pretty effective strategy.
It was low-hanging fruit at the time, 2017, 2018, right? Low-hanging fruit. You have this huge kind of email list growth expansion on the coattails of Amy Porterfield. And you have these connections. You were in B School. You knew Amy. It was the low-hanging fruit. It was the breadcrumb at the time. Do affiliate promotions. And then you started discovering more of who you were and what your own voice was and what you had to teach, what you had to offer. And then you felt ready to really let that be the star of the show, to let yourself be the star of the show instead of someone else's offerings. What I want to zoom out and talk about is the speed with which your business expanded. Because 2016, you start B School. Your first child was born also in 2016?
No, he was born at the end of 2014. So he was about a year old when I started my business.
Okay, so you have this 1-year-old, you start B School 2016, and by 2020, you are making 7 figures. I mean, that's insane, right? That's wild that you grew so quickly.
Yeah.
I want to know a little bit about who were your models at the time? Who were you trying to emulate and the way you were structuring your business and the way you were growing your business? Let's start there.
Yeah, I would say like those same people we've already mentioned. Like, I wanted to be like Amy Porterfield and Marie Forleo. I wanted to be like a person on stage, hosting events, being like, adored by the masses. I mean, I still like those things. I love to be adored. But yeah, I would say those were my role models. And, there were other people who, I don't know what they're doing anymore, but there was Denise Duffield Thomas. She had this program about money. There were a number of names in the industry that I was like, that was really what I was going after. And even though I already knew very early that the lifestyle that was being promised was like kind of a farce. But even if the lifestyle was a bit of a farce, it was still so great to work a regular amount of hours and, have more money than I never had in my life.
Right. Yeah.
But I didn't actually know anyone yet who was like, had any real like mission that they seemed connected to or that was actually believable for me. Like I knew people that had a mission statement and would talk about why they were doing the work that they were doing. But I didn't know anyone that seemed to be like deeply connected to their work, like in the ways that I feel right now. And back then I wasn't either, I was just like,
you were following the protocol.
Yeah, I was following the protocol and the protocol was working.
Right. Yeah, the protocol was working. And you've talked a lot in other interviews about how the protocol did work through 2020, especially the online business protocol, the rinse and repeat strategies and models were really succeeding for so many people. I appreciate your reflection that part of the dissonance that was showing up for you as your business was rapidly expanding was like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Like, what do I want to do? What do I stand for? Where's the value-driven, the mission-driven elements of this work? And you're looking around at your models and you're recognizing that that's not how they're operating. So there's like almost this period, it sounds like, of disillusionment that you went through, really recognizing that the lifestyle is kind of a farce. I'm feeling that the internal need for there to be more mission-driven alignment in the work that I'm doing. I'm curious to hear a little bit too about the way in which your team expanded. To go from brand new business owner to making 7 figures in 4 years. You had Sandra when you started, and then at the peak in 2020, how many people were you employing?
3 full-time employees plus Sandra, who was not an employee, but definitely did the work of a full-time employee, plus me. So we were a team of 5, which I think is, for that level of revenue is like pretty standard in online business. But just rewinding back to something you said, the year before, in 2019, the business made $800,000. And I had so much of it in the bank. Like, it's one thing to say, like, oh, we made $800,000, but I probably had $500,000 dollars just sitting in my bank account, which was like, I couldn't even believe it. Like, that was very surreal. Yeah. And I would talk about being rich and how great it is to be rich. And I was so loud about it. so new money, But that year, 2019, I remember having a conversation with my coach. And I
Business
said
coach,
to her,
life coach?
yeah, it was like more of a life coach who I talked to about business.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said to her, like, oh, I just realized that, like, the thing, like, I'm climbing this ladder, and the thing at the top of the ladder is more ladder. And I was like, wow, what am I doing here? I'm just trying to get more of what I already have. And she said, yeah, that's patriarchy. And I had like never really heard that word before, and like in a way that I interrogated it or thought about it. I just thought like, oh, patriarchy is just like the world where men are in charge. Okay, period. But I was like, oh no, okay, this is a fundamental piece of patriarchy that we just grow for the sake of growing bigger.
Right.
And so
Well,
already
it is the core tenet of capitalism, right? So there's an overlap in these two things, right? The ladder to nowhere is the core tenet of capitalism. You grow and grow and grow, and anything less than exponential expansion is failure. So you notice that, like, whoa, I'm in the matrix. Like, how did I get here?
Yeah. But by then the machine was going so fast that it just kept growing. Like, I didn't have to keep
bigger
pushing.
than you.
Yes, it was bigger than me. And, I had all the systems and things set up that we could repeat them and reuse a lot of the same stuff. But actually from that time, I also began walking it back, like slowly and intentionally walking it back in terms of like the promotional strategies that I would use, the things that I would say. And it was subtle. Like, it was not an overnight transformation by any means. But, I started to notice that, like, okay, it's been really helpful to me that I'm like young and beautiful and charming and white. And like, I have all these layers of privilege that helped me get where I am. And I've been leaning pretty heavily on them. So even just starting by acknowledging that, like, it doesn't work this way for everyone was a pretty big step into like trying to figure out what could be next.
Yeah. There were multiple things. I'm just really appreciating this 2020, 2021 season of life for you. I mean, this was the period of disillusionment, and you were becoming disillusioned on multiple levels, right? You're becoming disillusioned with patriarchy and capitalism as a whole, right? This ladder to nowhere. What am I doing? When is it going to be enough? And what am I seeking? What am I looking for? You're really wrestling with these philosophical questions about your work and your life. You're also becoming disillusioned with the work itself, not the writing, but the structural components, the way in which you've learned to do business. You're looking at the affiliate promotions, you're looking at the amount of privilege in the space as a whole, but also in your own individual journey. And you're starting to realize, wait a minute, like something's not quite right. Something's not right. I know you've talked in other interviews about specifically the people that you studied sales from, and how there was a time when you kind of jumped on board with these like large scale selling strategies, and then you start to realize, wait a minute, like something's not quite right about this. So you're questioning everything, which can send anyone into the void. But there's one other layer I'd love to weave into this, which is some disillusionment that was happening in your personal life too around this time. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's like, this is why the story is so much bigger than one interview, because peeling back the layers on my business was like only the first step.
Right.
And now there's like COVID coming into it. And so then I also started peeling back the layers on my beliefs about wellness and what it means to be well, the idea of wellness, and like my whole worldview of like, if you think the right thoughts, you will have the life that you want. So, and COVID really accelerated that questioning, because I actually had to make decisions for my health and the health of those around me. And my marriage was also, as I was changing, my husband at the time was like, what is happening to my wife? Like, he was really thrown that suddenly this person that he knew was so different and didn't share many of his beliefs. That was like experimenting with drugs, which was very disturbing to him. That was just like, yeah, I mean, I did change a lot rapidly. Like, I sympathized with him wondering what the fuck was going on, because I really like ripped up my life at the roots. And that led to separation. And so this was 2021. The business is not doing as well as it was in 2020, but we don't know yet what's going on. Could be just having a hard year. It's just like not as easy to sell things in 2021, which was the year I separated from my husband in the fall. Getting divorced is like by far the most difficult, most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. And threw my whole life into chaos. And it was 10 months of mediating the divorce. I took some time off, but I always had to come back because the machine needed me. Like, even though I had employees, and my employees took wonderful care of me. They did such hard work. I always had to come back. I mean, the other thing, now I had more revenue, but I also, as my revenue grew, my expenses were growing too. So I had to keep coming back and keep doing launches. In 2022, we did our biggest launch ever, which in terms of effort and things that and elements.
This is when you had affiliates.
Yes.
Right.
I brought on affiliates. And already, like, things were just not working as well. Like, now we're like 2021, bit of a backslide. 2022, we're still okay, but we're also still backsliding. And now, it's requiring a lot more effort to make the same or fewer sales. And I was like, 10 months of negotiating a divorce, trying to figure out parenting. Like, my husband was a stay-at-home dad. Like, I had to learn what my kids like to eat, like how to play with them and have fun, like how to be a family of 3. And also like going through this like intense grief of my family coming apart. It was just a horrible time. And the last big launch that we did in September 2022 was just okay. The results were like not nearly what we expected them to be. And, we're projecting our cash flow down the road. The business needs about $50,000 a month just to like keep going, pay everybody's salaries, including mine, which was generous. And I got on a call with Sandra and to figure out the next offer. And we needed a certain amount of revenue. And she said, okay, we said together, like, this is the time for us to do a mastermind, because a mastermind is like, $10,000 thing. And that'll be a nice bump that'll keep us going for a while. And I said, okay, we'll do it. And I got off the phone and was like, I can't do that. I don't have the capacity. Yeah, I don't have the capacity for leadership right now. Like, I barely have the capacity for myself to like take care of myself and my family, let alone like capacity to lead a mastermind. I also don't have the capacity to lead my team. And, Sandra and I had talked in the past about like, because we could see revenue was declining. And I had moments of despair where I was like, oh, let's just like throw it all in the garbage. I'll start some small thing, And she was she always talked me out of it. She always said like, no, Tarzan, like you have a great business here. Like you're just having a moment. She would talk me through it. But that time she did not try and talk me out of it. Like she knew I was like struggling so hard. Yeah. It was like other relationships in my life were falling apart. Like it was just a fucking shitty mess. So I decided to let my team go. Everybody except for Sandra. I let the team go. I took a month off and I actually had no idea what was going to be next. Like, what would I do next? I was probably still delivering on the program that we had sold. But yeah, I didn't really know. And some days I still feel like I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, let's pause.
Let's pause.
Let's take a breath. This is huge stuff. I'm so grateful that you're sharing this. You had what we in the biz call an awakening. And they fucking suck. But they're also wonderful, and you never regret them on the other side of them. But when you are in it and everything in your life, it feels like it is just spontaneously combusting left and right. It gets really dark and really scary. And when we are going through these awakenings, you don't get to compartmentalize your awakening, right? You don't get to just be like, I'm just going to have an awakening about my marriage. No, it's going to be your marriage. It's going to be your work. It's going to be your business. It's going to be your friendships. It's going to be, your sense of self. It's all of it at once. This is the spiritual growth, experience.
Yes.
And you were so deep in it. And I hope one day we can have an even longer conversation about your process. But one thing I want to reflect to you, I don't think I've ever told you this before, is you, Tarzan Kay, had been on my radar for a while, for years. Probably around 2018, 2019 is when I stepped into the online business space, just was dipping my toes in the water. And I would see you come across my radar and I'd be like, no, I don't think she's for me. You were like, in your pictures, you were wearing like sequins.
Yeah.
And
sequins.
there was like always sequins, and it was very shiny. And I was just like, no, I don't feel a resonance with that person. And then I don't remember what it was, but something came across my radar in 2021, 22. And it was around the time when like you really started telling the truth in your newsletter. I don't remember. I'll have to backtrack and figure out what it was. I don't remember what brought it into my radar, but I read something that you wrote. Maybe it was a newsletter. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to hear. Like, this person is telling the truth about their life and about their work and about business. And they are like opening their chest and showing us the inner workings of themselves, but also of what's happening behind the scenes. And I was immediately, I was just like, I was so along for the ride. And I feel like you've been so consistent the last few years of remaining this person who's willing to be seen in your process. And the way you're talking about this right now, like, I just want you to know that people are going to listen to this, and hearing your journey with your awakening, it's going to give them permission to just surrender to whatever process they're fighting against right now. Because you can't fight it. Like, resistance is futile. When it's happening, it's happening. And the way that you kind of released your grip, like you loosened your grip and you let it happen, was hard and it was messy. But it's gotten you to this new place in your work. And I want to talk about this new place that you're in now. Because in so many ways, I know it wasn't an overnight process, like you said. There was a dismantling that happened over a series of years. But you have very intentionally settled back into a much more intimate way of doing business. Smaller team, a lot less revenue than you were generating back in 2018, 19, 20. So I want to know what it's been like for you to come out of your awakening and to, I'm using air quotes here, like go backward in your business. How has that felt for you? And in what ways has it been like the best decision you've ever made?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like backwards, even though I totally see from one vantage point, it definitely looks like backwards. So, I mean, before I got to this place that I'm at, which is a great place, there was at least, there was the year of my divorce plus like a whole nother year after that of just sitting in the void of like, I don't know what to do next. So I'm just going to like sit in this place and I'm not going to like throw a million things at the wall and see if something sticks. I'm just going to like patiently wait. And, I was also like doing the things that I needed to do, like continuously offering programs that I was good at delivering and that made money
Growing
in the past.
your list.
Yeah. I never stopped emailing my list, like writing my newsletter, developing emerging ideas in my newsletter. That went on for 2 years. And one of the biggest actually inspirational moments that I had in a psychedelic journey actually was the whole idea of this mastermind power that I was going to offer. And it was kind of a full circle moment because I had like started dismantling my business by when I thought I can't run this mastermind. Like I can't support people in that way. And then like a whole 2 years later to be like, oh my God, I have learned so much. I have come so far. I have like incredible capacity for leadership, especially leading people through really difficult things and making hard choices in their businesses. And like, I'm ready now. So that was like the first new thing that I had created in a long time. And one thing has been really consistent in my business, but way more in the last couple of years is like, I have really very aligned customers and clients. Like it's rare that I have to deal with someone that's like difficult clients or that like expect something that I didn't offer or, that are just difficult to work with. Like it happens sometimes, but for the most part, like I really get to work with really amazing people who are already successful for the most part and want to engage in like the really difficult questions of how we sell, which I happen to have learned a lot about. So yeah, I mean, like in those difficult years, like I definitely through much painful excavation, like found the meaning and the mission of my work that was kind of missing before. I don't even know, because I did have a mission before that when I look at it and read it, I'm like, no, that was the mission and it was successful and we did good work and I felt serious about it. Sure. But there's something about, maybe it's a thing of like going through that awakening or like midlife crisis, whatever it was. And I have come to know myself so much better. Yeah. And I don't take failure personally anymore. I no longer identify my worth with the top line revenue that my business makes. I know that those two things are completely separate. I know actually now that if my business failed, I would be okay. I would find something else. My work has value. My ideas have value. There's just like, I have a whole different baseline than that woman that I was before who like jumped on a high-speed train and was like, oh my God, this is going so fast. Like, what is this is great. Yeah. I bring a lot more like patience to my work. I'm still scared like so often. Like that's maybe just part of being a human in 2024. Like we just have like unprecedented stress and challenges that didn't seem to exist prior to COVID. But I still feel scared, but I also feel like my boots are firmly on the ground. And that is something that is just like, is priceless.
There's something so resonant about what I'm going to call your order of operations here in business and in life. You look back at your business in 2019, let's just pick that year. And you read your mission statement and you're like, well, I had a mission. And we were doing that work. But the way you describe it, it was a little bit hollow. And I think that is often true when our order of operation is to prioritize top line revenue over the mission itself. And when we choose to prioritize climbing that ladder to nowhere and growing profit quarter over quarter over really sitting with ourselves and meeting ourselves in the void sometimes to be like, where am I in life and what is happening for me? And this transition that happened for you is when you reversed that order of operations and all of a sudden you said, I'm not going to do it that way anymore. I'm going to lead with who I am and what I believe and what I actually need in my life to be happy. I'm going to get really clear about what that is, how much money I actually need, what kind of house I will make me happy. You got really specific. And then you said, I'm going to lead with the mission. That is what I felt. I, as a consumer, someone in your audience, like that's when I felt the pivot, was when all of a sudden you stepped forward and said, hey, hold on, this is what's really happening in my life. And this is what I actually believe, right? This is when you were talking a lot about persuasion and coercion and copywriting and selling. And then I could feel the resonance that this is someone who's running a business that is actually about the mission, not about the revenue. The revenue matters. It's important. but it's not what it's about. I felt it, and that drew me to you, and that made me, want to invest in working with you. So just for people listening, I think there's an opportunity here for you to pause and kind of ask yourself, what am I leading with in my business? Am I leading with the capitalistic conditioning that says this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it, and then your mission and your own needs are secondary to that? And if so, can you experiment with switching the order and noticing what changes in your life? I think that's a lesson that you're offering us here with your story, Tarzan, and it's something we all need to hear. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I could just say a little bit about that, which is that in 2018 or 2019, I started working with Kate Northrup, and she was maybe the first person to ask me the question, how much is enough? And like really to sort of instill in me that it was important for me to know, like to put an actual number on how much is enough.
Yeah.
And so that even though I never sat down and did the math on it, but I did sit with that question for many years. And in getting divorced and, losing, this is like the most ruinous financial transaction of my life, hopefully, having to really basically start over. I don't own a home anymore. A lot of things I used to have that I don't anymore. But fighting so hard for the things that I have, like fighting so hard for my time and my relationship with my kids, just, to have a home where I feel like peaceful and safe, like that it really taught me the things that are important. And I fought so hard for them that now I arrived at a place where I'm like, if I could just like, Lord, please let me keep the things that I have. Like that would be so wonderful.
I mean, that is the greatest act of rebellion, pushing against capitalist and colonized expectations for life. One of the greatest acts of rebellion is to say, I have enough. And now I want to sustain. I want to sustain my life. I want to sustain the earth. I want to sustain my business and the work that I do with my clients. Like I just want to sustain.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. Would you be willing to tell us what is, at this stage in your business, what is your goal top line revenue? What is that number that would allow you to sustain yourself and your small team?
Well, that's a good question. So I pay myself about $150,000. So I need to make my salary, and in order to make my salary without adding more work and programs, I need roughly another $200,000 on top of that. So actually, I'm going to say $250,000. So if the business does $400,000, I get a comfortable salary. I don't, sometimes I think to myself, like when I had so much more money, I didn't actually have to think that much about like financial planning or like being smart with money. Like I just think 150,000, if I'm smart with it, if I'm like not overly spendy, like that's enough for me. And I might have to get a little crafty now and then, but I don't need more than that.
I love that, Tarzan. And that's you, just so we're clear with everyone, that's paying you, that's paying Sandra as your consultant, and a full
No, part-time virtual assistant. So there's me, Sandra, part-time virtual assistant. There's a lot of software that still powers the business. There are contractors that do many different things. I run ads. That's an expense. There's just like a million little things.
Right. And then there's always, keeping a healthy budget for yourself, right? You being able to hire a coach or join a program or go on a retreat. That 350 to 400,000 gross is right in, the same is true for me in the smaller version of my business. And the more I talk to people about numbers, the more I'm hearing that seems to be like a pretty common sort of sweet spot. Like 350 feels like a sweet spot where you can be supported, you can have a team, you can grow your business, and you can live a really comfortable life, but you don't cross that threshold into having to manage a lot of people or feeling responsible for, the paychecks, feeling like, if the business doesn't succeed, all of these people on my team are going to suffer. You don't have to step into that kind of stressful territory. And I want to circle back to something you said a minute ago, which is, I feel it too, and I love it. It's like when you give yourself permission to have a smaller business, you can be a lot choosier, about what kind of clients you welcome into your business, because you don't need as many clients, right? When you're trying to, get 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people to buy something from you, a course, a membership, whatever it might be, you're going to lose some quality control on what kind of people purchase. And then, you got to deal with a bunch of people who are just pains in the ass, let's be honest. But when you're operating at a smaller scale, and you're calling in fewer people overall into your ecosystem, you get to know them, first of all, which is something that I love. Like, I love actually knowing and interacting with the people who are buying from me. And you get to have more stringent filters, right? And application procedures, or however you do it in your business. But you get to really make sure that the people who are coming forward are people that you want to spend time with. And that, for me, I think you're saying the same is true for you, is a massive improvement in my quality of life.
Yeah. Another thing I just want to make sure we don't forget to talk about, because it's important when we're talking about paying ourselves. I want to take more time off more than I want to earn more money. So that would be I guess one goal that I have for the next year. This year, I don't know if I could say how many weeks I took off, but I took off most of August. Let's say I took off the equivalent of 1 month this summer, and it was so great. I just loved that. And I would love to be able to build on that more than if I had to choose between a $50,000 pay increase and taking July and August off. I choose July and August for sure.
Oh, thank you for saying that. This is another conversation on the Deeply Rested podcast. It's like, how do you pay yourself as a business owner? And money is just one way that you pay yourself. It's the whole Deeply Rested philosophy that to be deeply rested means, as a business owner, that you are paying yourself in as many non-monetary ways as you are monetary ways. And time off is a huge part of that. So I appreciate you saying that. That amount of time off is not something that you can easily do when you're running a 7-figure business with a full team. Much harder.
Much more
to
difficult.
Extricate yourself. I also want to reference back to what you said earlier about the fear of uncertainty, and how you had the fear of uncertainty when you were making $800,000, and you have the fear of uncertainty when you made $250,000. Because guess what? The fear of uncertainty is a non-negotiable aspect of being a human being. And it's like, there's so much power and liberation and shedding all of the conditioning that has tricked you into believing that there is some way of doing business or doing life where the outcomes are guaranteed. And that's what we're sold, right? Especially in the online business space. Everything is sold as a promise, as a guarantee. And they hook you in with this fantasy that, if you do this, you can live life with less uncertainty, with less anxiety. And what I'm hearing from you is that you're really learning in your own process of going from big to small, that the uncertainty is just a part of being human. Do you want to say anything else about that? What that's been like for you?
Yeah, I had a coach tell me when I was going through my divorce that I was like, oh my God, why do I feel so bad? This hurts so much. And she said, well, one thing about divorce that's hard is the loss of certainty. Like when you have a family, you think, well, this is going to be my family. This is it forever. Yeah. And then she said, but you never really had certainty.
Right. It's the illusion of certainty.
Yes, the illusion of certainty. Yeah. And just this morning, I was sitting down at my desk and I've been off for most of the summer. So I'm easing my way back in and it's a little bit gritty. And I was like, oh, why do I feel this way? I'm looking at my revenue is fine. We have excellent cash flow right now, this cushion in the bank, programs are running well, there's problems to solve, but everything is definitely okay right now. And yet, there it is.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder, there is no number. And I think that's partly why we keep climbing the ladder is we imagine that when we get to another rung on the ladder, then I'll feel okay. If I just get a few extra rungs, then it's if I fall down, I have some security, but I really don't know that we ever get there. I think it's actually an inside job.
It is always an inside job. And I have seen that I know a lot of people who are millionaires.
Same.
And I see them like frantically climbing the ladder, and if you ask them, hey, 20 years ago, what number did you think would make you feel secure? Oh, if I had, I thought if I had $20,000 in my savings account, I would be calm. And I'm like, well, how much do you have now? Oh, 2.5 million. And you still feel like a hot mess? Like, maybe money isn't the solution. But that conditioning goes so deep.
Yes.
It goes so deep. So I really appreciate you normalizing for us. Like, the uncertainty is part of the process. And I'll just share for me, sort of philosophically, going back to the order of operations, like what comes first, me and my process and my values, or making money and succeeding in business, which comes first. When I'm leading with, I want to succeed in business in the conventional way, which is making more money quarter over quarter, the uncertainty cannot be softened in my body because I am striving for an external goal. When I reverse them and I actually lead with my own process, I can soften the uncertainty because when it hits, when a wave of anxiety, when a wave of uncertainty hits, I can sit in my own practice, whatever that looks like for you. For me, it's going outside and sitting under a tree and just being silent and just like looking around and breathing and reminding myself that like I trust that everything is working out exactly like it's supposed to. I have never been in dire straits. I will always be okay. And I want to come back to the strength of my mission, right? I want to come back to, why am I doing what I'm doing? And when I can reconnect to that and give myself a minute to breathe, often I can soften the really intense edges of the uncertainty and keep going. And that's really hard to do when you feel like you've got to get from 800,000 to 1 million, or from 97,000 to 125. If that's what you're aiming for, it's going to be really hard for you to feel better in your own body. And I think everything you've shared today, Tarzan, is a really great lived example of how you can let some of that go and really settle into yourself. And it's not going to disappear, and it's not going to be easier, but it will be softer and it will be more spacious, and that's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. I guess I also wanted to qualify, like, it's not easier. It's just as hard as it always has been, and harder, in fact. But my capacity is so much higher. Right. And a lot of that is like, because I am rooted in my own values and why I'm doing this, I'm taking care of myself in ways other than just making more and more money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like to talk about the difference between ease and effort. And, I want a business that is full of ease, and I want a life that is full of ease. And that's like my life's work, is to experiment and to find pathways to ease in my own process, personally and professionally. But I don't want to conflate ease with no effort, right? Ease doesn't mean there's no effort. Of course there's effort. Of course, we want to make $400,000. That's a lot of money. It's not a lot of money compared to businesses that are making, $1 billion, $5 billion a year. But $400,000 a year, like, that's a lot of money. And we're going to have to put in effort for that. But I want there to be ease. And I look at you and I'm learning from you and connecting with you. And I'm like, Tarzan is someone who is finding channels of ease in your life and in your business. True. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing about those publicly with all of us. So thank you. I want to end with a question about breadcrumbs, coming full circle.
Great.
You've always been a person, as we now know, who is really good at following the breadcrumbs in your life. So I'm really curious, like, what breadcrumb is right in front of you right now?
Whoa, if only I could see it. What breadcrumb is right in front of me right now?
What breadcrumb are you looking at, thinking about?
Well, this is just a small thing, but
breadcrumbs are small.
Breadcrumbs are small. That's the thing about breadcrumbs. Yeah. I'm hosting a retreat tomorrow for the members of my mastermind, and I'm reflecting on running this retreat last year, and even the whole running this program last year. Like, it was the first time, and so it required so much more effort. I was more nervous. I didn't know how it was going to be. And I'm looking ahead at this retreat that's tomorrow. And I'm like really excited about it. I feel like I'm going on retreat, even though I will be leading these people for 4 days. I'm just noticing that about myself, that like, oh, that's a different feeling. And like, oh, maybe this is something that I want to do more of. I don't know. Or maybe it's just noticing that something I'm no longer like grasping at trying to prove myself and like show people that I'm worthy of this money that they paid me. I'm like, no, I know it. I see it. I'm going to go in and deliver it. And that's like a really new place in my business. And I'm really interested to see where that takes me, what I would offer next, like with that feeling.
That is a delicious breadcrumb. I love it. And the next time you're on this podcast, we're going to follow up on that breadcrumb and just be really curious. Like, well, where did it lead? Maybe it's super logical and now you are a full-time retreat facilitator, or maybe it was like a winding path towards something else. Tarzan, you're such a gem of a human being. I'm lucky to know you. We're lucky to have you. And I would love for you to let the people know where they can join your newsletter and find out more about your work.
Yeah, my best work is my newsletter. It's the whole reason I have this whole business, is like all these offers and all these different things I do are all to serve the purpose of me writing this newsletter, which can be found at tarzankay.com/newsletter. It's called Emails But Better. And I share, it's mostly about running an online business and what it really looks like and how to do it in a consent-based way. So that's really the best way to hang out with me. I read and reply to most email replies, like 90% of them. I'm also on LinkedIn sporadically. I'm like, social media is not really my thing, but I'm experimenting to see if that breadcrumb is fruitful. If there's a loaf at the end of the breadcrumbs, I'm still not sure yet. But yeah, that's the best place to get in touch with me, is on my newsletter. And there's many options in my newsletter. If you ever feel like it's too many emails, you can change the frequency. You can turn off promo emails. It's for anyone who's interested in how to do email marketing in a way, and newsletters in a way that just feels really good, that doesn't feel intrusive and like, oh, do people even want this? Read my newsletter, because I'll show you how.
I couldn't agree more as a subscriber of your newsletter. And I'll also add that if you're listening and you're not interested in starting a newsletter, I would still join Tarzan's newsletter because, like I said earlier, you do such a beautiful job of telling the truth and being honest, what it's like to be a person in 2024 who is trying to human and run a business at the same time. Your newsletter is a real gift to all of us.
And it's all just my truth, and leaves lots of space for people to make up their own decisions. It's not about convincing them to get on board with the things that I believe. And I think one thing of feedback that I often get is that the things that I write about and talk about gives people more permission to question other things, or even to question me. And that's kind of what's fun about it.
Tarzan, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thanks,
am
Maegan.
grateful. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.